I am here with Mayor Keith Ramos. Keith, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Hey, Royce, thanks. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you sitting down with us. I'm sure you're very busy. Just for full disclosure to the audience, I'm talking to you. I've been introduced to you through our mutual friend, Joey. My audience knows him as Yoey. And in many ways, we would have finished this interview if it weren't for him by now. So we're finally talking, and I appreciate that he put us together.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
I have to give him a hard time. It's my job. So you were the mayor. Help me out. I cannot pronounce the name of this town. It's a German name. I'm a Jewish kid. Help me out.
Freelandheisen Township.
And you were the mayor of Freelandheisen for 3 years.
Yes.
Now you're an independent. Is that true?
So I was always registered as an independent. And I would probably say before I decided to run for township committee, which is a story in of itself, I probably knew very little bit about the process. When I decided to run, I was surprised that I would have to change my party affiliation to be able to run in the Republican primary. If not, I would have had to have waited to go into the general election and then just put my name on a ballot. So I did. I changed my party affiliation, and I became part of the Republican Party.
Now, what was the jumping off point for you to run in the first place? Did somebody come to you?
So I guess a few years back, so I've been living in Freelandheisen for about 16 years now. And a few years back, a buddy of mine asked me if I wanted to join the rec committee. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll join it. But he had asked me for about 5 years to join it. I took myself off the road because I was going into the city a lot. And I decided I wanted to start getting involved so that I can, coach my kids and be around my kids a little bit more. While I was on the rec committee, there was just some things that I saw happening that I was getting privy to that I wasn't privy to before because, a lot of times if you're not in government and you're going on your day-to-day business, you're kind of ignorant to the things that are going on within your township, especially at a local level. So once I got privy to some of the things that were going on, I didn't like the conversations that were happening. I didn't like the fact that, we were $2.4 million in debt and no one could explain that to me. I didn't like some of the policies that were going on, some of the, expenses that were going on. They were talking about, putting in some type of, low-income housing, three stories high with, check cashing places and laundromats. And when I started to hear the rumblings of that, I said, I probably should get involved and start going to these township meetings. When I got on the rec committee and then I started coming home and explaining to my family what I had heard, my wife said, do me a favor. I don't mind that you're on the rec committee, but make me a promise that you will never get involved in township politics. I said, I have absolutely zero desire to get involved in that. And then I went to a meeting and I asked some questions. And when I was done with the questions, at the time, the mayor was out in the parking lot when we were done. And I was asking tough questions about finances, and they couldn't answer them. And to me, it was basic. 1 + 1 is 2. Don't tell me it's 3. So what ended up happening is I went out to the parking lot, and the gentleman actually said to me, why do you care about what goes on with the money here? I am the king. I have the power. Now listen to that. The guy said, I am the king and I have the power. That's something that you would say inside your head. You wouldn't say that out loud. So I thought I was dreaming at one point. And it was actually right then and there that I went home to my wife and I said, listen, I'm going to have to run for township committee. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. And I guess part of that is because I've always believed that, I was coming home and telling my family what was going on. And if you're in a position that you think you can help out and make change and do something better, then you should do it. But if you don't, then you should be quiet and let the people that are doing it do it.
Let me stop you.
So either get up and put your time involved. Yeah.
First of all, as soon as you told your wife you weren't going to do something, that's almost like you jinxed yourself.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she brought that up to me as soon as I came home and told her. She said, you said you weren't going to do this, but, I just didn't like the conversation that was going on, and I thought that I would be able to add something to it and maybe, maybe add some clarity, some transparency to what was going on and put the town in a better position, which we did.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to stop on for a moment. I like what you said about if you're basically don't complain unless you're willing to get off the couch and get in the mix and try to get something done. So I applaud you for that. But let's go back to this interaction for a minute. This is the mayor saying to you, what do you care? I'm the king?
Yeah.
Is this the guy you wound up running against?
No, so I actually, believe it or not, I ran with him because it was two seats were up in that primary. So we ran, we both ran for the seats, and I mean, there was really nobody contesting the seat. Um, so, I mean, there was, but in a small town, these are not major elections.
I'm just shocked. I mean, like you said, that's something that you whether you should be thinking it or not, it's another conversation. But that's an inside thought. The hubris to say that out loud to you, and then that to be the spark that lit the fire for you.
And because it was so arrogant, and I still couldn't believe that it was said out loud. When things like that are said and things like that happen, it only makes you question more stuff. Like, if this is what we're so comfortable saying out loud, what's going on behind closed doors?
Well, what did he think? You were going to accept that and just kind of put your head between your legs and walk away?
I don't know, because, he was on, he had served on a rec committee with me too. And, I've been called a lot of things. Quiet is not one of them.
Well, I'm 5 minutes of trying to set this thing up with you.
I mean, I hate injustice, and to me, it just wasn't right. So that's why I decided to run. I mean, that literally is the genesis of why I decided to run. I know that other people had asked me and thought there was like some, bigger cosmic reason, but it wasn't. I mean, a comment was made to me that I was very uncomfortable with. I was already going to the meetings for about a year before I decided to run, and I wasn't comfortable with the questions not being answered. There was a lot of executive sessions that were going on, which at the time I really didn't even know, to be honest with you, what an executive session was,
right,
why they were having them. I just knew that they were explored meeting that the public wasn't privy to, which kind of bothers me in of itself, because there are certain things now being on this side of the table that you do have to discuss. And in New Jersey and state statute, they're pretty defined on what you can speak about in an executive session. But I come from the school as if you don't have something to hide, let's just talk about it. We don't need to go behind closed doors. I get it. Contractual things of legality, when we're going to go through mitigation. I get that. But 99.9% of the stuff we can speak about right in public. I mean, we govern better when we govern together. And the people will not be able to help us govern if they don't have all of the information and the facts.
It's so basic.
Very basic.
And in a world of so much information and such rapid access to information, we've lost sight of such the core fundamental principles of governing. And it is truly working together to accomplish what's in the best interest of the working class. And
because we talk about truth and transparency.
Yeah.
But we don't like what that looks like. See, because we never leave the room for the possibility that we could be wrong. A lot of times when we get into a forum together and we disagree, me and you right now will have a conversation, we might disagree. There's some power in that, right? It gains perspective. And if I go into with understanding that I do have a view and I do have an opinion, now there's a difference between opinion and facts, right? And I'm open to this discussion. Well, you might tell me something that I didn't think of. It might not even necessarily make me wrong, but it does make me better informed. And by leaving the room for that possibility, it gains perspective, which in turn helps us govern better, because we don't know everything walking into it. Everybody has a different facet, a different walk of life that they can add something to a conversation. Not everything. It's that old adage: you take what you need, you leave what you don't want. So a lot of times when you're going at it from that perspective, with the public, and you're open-minded about it, you're going to govern a little bit better, because you're going to get I believe that you'll never know how to lead until you know how to follow. And a lot of times we forget what it felt like to be in the back of the line. Who knows what's going on more so is the people in the back of the line. Once you forget about those people and you stop listening to them, there's a problem. So
I feel like that's what happened with the Democrats in this last presidential cycle.
I mean, it's 100% what happened with them. I mean, I think that they went to the fullest extent that you can go to the left. And I think that they stopped really listening to the American people. I mean, we keep talking about poverty and wealth, and then we keep saying things like, kitchen counter topics and things of that nature. There's always going to be poverty and there's always going to be wealth. There's always going to be classes. But we never focus on quality of life.
Right.
We never talk about quality of life.
Isn't that the truth?
You should not be able to work in a place. Should not be able to work somewhere that you cannot live. Teachers should not have to work 2 jobs in order to be able to afford to live.
Teachers shouldn't have to pay for their own school supplies.
that is just disgusting in of itself. No, they should not have to pay for their own school supplies. Absolutely not.
And show me somebody out there that thinks otherwise, because this is where when we talk about party politics, it's such a distraction from real issues because we all want the same things. I really believe that at the end of the day. And to your point about having conversation that might breed disagreement, it's not about persuasion. It's about listening. That's where the Democrats lost. They started talking down to everybody and stopped listening.
I mean, and there's culpability on both sides. My personal opinion is the Democratic got away from the Democratic Party that I remember when I was a kid. And it got so far gone that you no longer recognized it. The Republican Party made some ground up, and to me personally, became something that I was now more proud to be affiliated with. Because, listen, I was a registered independent for a reason, not for no reason. I'm not a fan of a two-party system. And it's not because, I think there should be one rule. I think that the power should be put back to the people. If you go on some of the websites that I've posted on, you can see that I've stood on this issue emphatically. The easiest way to divide is in half. And I think that that's what this two-party system does a lot. I mean, both parties at times talk out of both sides of their mouth, and then we forget the people that we're governing for.
Well,
I mean, we keep saying things like we're here for the people. Are we really here for the people?
No, they're there for their speaking engagements and to get their pockets lined by special interest money. They all go out on K Street and party together at night. So now my question to you is, because look, I've been an independent my whole life, so I firmly agree with you about the two-party system. We were talking, though, before we actually started recording, and I look at something like the open primary, and I have to ask me, do you think that that's actually in the best interest of? Because there was a time where I thought a third party would be the right thing, and now I feel like we're kind of damned either way. In other words, a third party isn't going to do anything right now other than create more problems. So I look at something like an open primary, and I got to ask, is that actually helpful, or is that actually designed to do the opposite of what we think it's there for?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about in New Jersey, it's really not an open primary like we were discussing. It's more like a semi-open primary. I mean, in order for me to run, I had to change my party affiliation. And if you go to vote that's in the primaries, and if you go to the general election and you go to vote, I mean, then you can vote and you're going to pick a party, right? You're going to pick who's ever on that ballot. But in order to vote in the primary, you got to change your party affiliation. A true open primary where we can vote for the best candidate would probably, to me, be beneficial. I mean, again, I'm not a fan of the two-party system because I think that that's just the quickest way to divide. I mean, I would rather, not see that. I mean, as far as we look at the special interest groups and all the money that's thrown at this and all the war chests. I mean, let's take the money off the table. When you start taking the money, which I believe is the root of all evil, but when you start taking the money off the table, you know what's left? The truth.
Yeah.
That's what's left. It's the truth. So take all the money away. Let's have some requirements to run for any elected position, and then let's give free airtime. I don't know why we can't. And everybody gets the same amount of airtime, and we level the playing field. We balance it. And then you can have your 30 minutes, and you can get up and you can sling mud if you want, or you could speak about the issues that are important to the public. You could do whatever you want, but balance the playing field. Take away the party interests. Take away the war chests, and I think that you will close some of this because I feel like what we're doing, especially as you get up there in politics, we're worried about the next election. We're worried about being elected again. I mean, that's why I believe in term limits.
We just roll right from one to the next.
That's all we do, and I don't know what we're really getting achieved. I mean, a lot of this is smoke, screen, and mirrors. I mean, why do we have to have a 6,000-page bill to tell us what you can tell us in 12?
Right.
Why are we still doing that?
Because we know people won't read that, so we can bury it with pork, and then we can get away with murder.
Well, it's the same way that, like when we talked about internet. Internet is a matter of infrastructure, not a matter of convenience, but yet we kept calling it a matter of convenience. And then you go and you put these e-connectivity grants out and all these grants talking about high-speed internet access to rural towns throughout the United States, and we bury it. Why not give me the first 10 points of what I need to apply for this grant so that I can determine if I'm going to be able to apply for it or not? I shouldn't have to go out as a small municipality and hire a grant writer or spend hours and hours reading through all this paperwork. Just give me the points. Give me the talking points. You have to be within this amount of people in this radius. You have to have this demographic. Like, give me the points of the grant, and then and it'll be easier. If you really want to give me the money, don't make it harder. Make it easier. So make it harder because you don't want me to get the money.
Well, that's just it. And it's also creating a barrier for other people to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
When you were running for mayor, what kind of money did you have to raise to win a successful election?
None. I mean, in a small town, it's you're going to talk about you're talking about a town with 2,200 residents, 780 homes. So it's not a big town. I mean, listen, I was the mayor of Freelandheisen. It's a beautiful town, but I'm not the mayor of New York City.
Not yet.
So you put that in perspective, but you're not raising any money really. What you're doing is you're actually getting out there like a grassroots campaigning. You're speaking to your constituents and you're letting them know where you stand. I mean, when I ran on transparency. I ran on fiscal responsibility, and I ran on bringing more high-speed internet connectivity to our township. I mean, when I first got on committee and I started going to these meetings, even before I was on committee, my town had 3% of my town had access to high-speed internet. That means 97% of my town had dial-up.
That's crazy.
It is. I mean, I've been to the Midwest where there's a hotel and nothing else, and it still had high-speed internet access. Yeah. There's third world countries that had better internet access.
And that becomes an education issue.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the way that we get our information. I mean, who's still reading a newspaper? That's why I said it's no longer a matter of convenience. This is a matter of infrastructure. Nothing shined a light more on that than the pandemic. I mean, when we were all forced to stay in our homes and this was the only way that we were going to communicate or go to school, you can't get out of school with dial-up.
Nope.
So it again, not to mention, by bringing these much needed services to your town, you increase the value of your town.
I think it's kind of cool to share with folks how accessible the idea of running for the office of mayor can be for them. I think people think that politics is inaccessible, and I love the idea of having more working class folks taking an interest in leadership. I think the biggest problem we have, to your point about being at the back of the line, the biggest problem we have is the folks who are in positions of leadership are so far removed from the working class experience and have no idea what it's like in today's day to actually try to not just provide, but to get ahead. And most people are just working 2-3 jobs just to maintain status quo. So how do you get ahead when you can barely maintain?
Well, I mean, to your point where people getting involved, I think, right, so a lot of times people don't want to get involved because they say, well, that's just too much work. And they don't know, or they say it's not worth it or I don't have the time. Listen, some of those points are valid. Some people don't have the time because also to your point, they're working 2-3 jobs, right? But the average person let's say for New Jersey, in 80% of these municipalities can easily go put in their petition and run for these offices and get involved. First of all, I don't believe anybody should be in these positions for 30 years, period. I just don't. The problem that I have with people sitting in these positions for a long time is we evolve, families change, needs change, technology changes. A person sitting in this office for 30 years, please tell me what you can understand about today's family's needs. You don't. And that's not a bad thing, but that's why you need to move on and let other people come in because they have a better grasp of what today's families need. Like when I was on rec, I was on it for 9 years. I coached my kid. I went through the program and a younger group of parents were coming in. It was time for me to move on from that because I don't know that I know everything about what these kids need coming up, what their needs are going to be, but those parents do, and they should get involved with me getting out of the way. Because a lot of times too, like if they see that the positions are filled, they don't want to get involved because they're like, well, somebody's already doing it. Why should I get involved? And people need to move on, and some of that will help force some of these younger people to get involved and get active. As far as when you're talking about a township committee, I believe all young people should go to township. It should be part of the curriculum. You should have to go to your local township meeting and put in a couple meetings and then sit with whether it's your mayor, your deputy mayors, or just your board members or your committee members and interview them, ask them questions, ask them what a budget looks like, ask them what a municipal budget looks like. learn about the caps, inside and outside the caps, and ask these questions and become better informed. Because if they become better informed, maybe they don't want to run. You know, maybe they go home and they're sharing it with their younger brother or sister or their friends, and now their friends get intrigued. That's how that stuff takes shape. But people should get involved. You don't have to get involved where you're going to run for committee, but you should get involved where you have somewhat of a working knowledge of what's going on in your town, because it's a microcosm view of exactly what's going on in our country. So it's always best to go to the municipal level. Listen, for me, I think being on a committee of a small town is probably one of the hardest things you could do, because I'm sitting right there in front of my residents and I'm accessible all the time. So you're going to see me in the street. You're going to see me at a game. You're going to see me at a soccer game, and you're going to come up to me and you're going to ask me and you're going to hold me accountable right then and there. I don't live in Washington, and I'm not in Washington governing for Ohio. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not working that way. I'm in the governor's office and I'm not seeing each and every constituent. Here, out of 2,200 residents, I probably know 1,000 of them. So they're accessible by my cell phone, by my email. They know where I live. They know what times I'm going to be in town hall. So we're right there in front of them. But I would recommend anybody that is interested, at least go to a meeting and see what it's all about. It's not, honestly, a little bit of time. Now, information is so accessible that you could type in anything and get the answers. And as long as you have a certain level of comprehension, you'll be able to understand and follow it. And then ask pertinent questions. If you don't understand it, there's nothing wrong with asking the question. Well, what does in the cap mean? I read it, but I really couldn't understand it. Oh, this is exactly what it means. And nobody should have a problem with explaining that to you. I mean, if you're asking your public officials to explain something, and there's nothing wrong with them not knowing everything, because you're not going to know everything. But if this is the stuff that they're governing with, they should be able to explain it and simply explain it. Because if they cannot simply explain it, then they don't understand it. And that's where a lot of the problem lies, because we don't understand the stuff that we're actually feeling.
Well, that goes back to the reaction that you got, which was, what do you care? I'm the king. Because he didn't have an answer. So he got an emotional response. You got an emotional response out of him because he actually wasn't equipped to give you an actual answer. And he fumbled the ball.
And I asked him, did you just say that out loud? And he said yes. Yeah.
I mean, if he should have just said no. I still wouldn't have believed him, obviously, but I would have had doubt. That's wild. Yeah. That's a hell of an origin story.
Yeah.
So forgive me, because our researchers sent everything in with a Gaussian blur over it. Did you actually have 2 full terms? Because it says 3 years.
So I'm still on committee.
Okay.
And this is my last term. This is my last year in my second term. So I ran 1 full term, and then I'm in the last year of my second term.
Okay.
And I think the paperwork that Yoey sent to you, just talked about some of the achievements that were made by my previous committee, which I'll be honest with you, I'm very proud of it. That committee made achievements that I would say has never been seen in this town, ever. I mean, we took $2.4 million in debt and we reduced it to $620,000 in 5 years. When you're balancing a budget on dollars, that's major. And we did that through being fiscally responsible and thinking outside the box. We identified the areas that we were frivolously spending money in, and we fixed them. We broke bad agreements. We stayed the course, and we knocked that debt down. I mean, should the new committee continue down this path, they could be debt-free in this town. And to be debt-free means you're the bank now. A lot of people don't realize that in municipalities in New Jersey, we bond for our debt every year. So that debt fluctuates. So this year I could pay $75,000 in bond interest, or I could pay $25,000 in bond interest. Just so to put the numbers in relative terms, $75,000 could pave a half a mile of road.
So who buys?
Big deal.
Who buys those bonds?
Private buyers. I mean, we put them out for bid, and people will bid on them and buy them.
But you don't have to be a resident. Anybody can buy the bonds, right?
Anybody can buy. Well, there are some qualifications that you have to be to go and buy a bond, but yes, anybody can really buy the bonds.
So ownership could actually exist outside of the state.
I don't know emphatically, but would imagine so if anybody can buy them, because I'd imagine private companies buy them. So yeah, I would imagine you could.
But I would imagine that was information you were privy to in terms of who was buying.
No, because you have a CFO that goes out and shops the bonds. So that wouldn't be something that, if I asked, I'd be privy to it. But what we do is it goes out for bid, and then someone just buys the bonds. And it's a yearly thing. It's just been happening since forever. So I don't think anybody questions who buys the bonds. Really, what you're more concerned about is that somebody picks up that bond note, and that nobody picks it up. But it always gets picked up. But that's where it changes. It fluctuates from year to year. So you're paying, if you have $2.4 million in debt, your debt interest could be $150,000.
So you're starting to
go from year to year.
This is a world that is it's so above my understanding when it comes to bonds. And the way that I can simply explain it is, you're talking about people buying notes, right? So it's like I owe you. So now if I'm raising money with bonds, I could owe the bank a bunch of money via bonds, and then it's just a matter of how I guess what the bonds mature.
No, so what'll happen is a bond is just so I guess to break it down, imagine like your mortgage, right? But you're going to re-up every year for your interest rate. So right now, if we have $2 million, let's say just $1 million, we have $1 million in debt. Someone's going to pick that up in a municipal bond, and it's guaranteed. New Jersey has good paying practices, 30 days and the whole 9 yards. So somebody's going to pick that up, and then that interest rate is going to fluctuate year to year, which is the misconception for most people. I think most residents believe that we have a debt and it's a 30-year note, like a mortgage.
30-year note.
And it's not. It fluctuates. And that has to be factored into your budget. So, a township like Freeland Heights, our budget's $1.8 million. Well, think about that. $75,000, $150,000. That's a big chunk of change. Yeah. So you want to kick your debt down. There's power in being debt free. Listen, in life in general, a smart finance person understands that there's power in being debt free. You become the bank. So instead of paying $75,000 in bond interest and we're debt free, we now make money on the money we're sitting in the bank.
So does that now you can sell bonds?
No, this doesn't mean you can sell bonds. What it means is, like, let's say as a municipality, the money that we take in from taxes, we have sitting in the bank, and maybe we're making 2% on our money now that's sitting in the bank.
The local economy, that's fascinating to me. I've never even stopped to think about how that's separate from everything else and how you're literally running your town as a business.
Yeah, this has been a big discussion. So you know what? It operates a little bit different than a business because you're not really there to make profit, but you do have something called a surplus. And in New Jersey, you have something called caps. So you have in the cap and out the caps. In the cap is basically all of your operating procedure budgets. And outside the cap is like your pensions, your bond interest, your debt notes, all of that stuff. And there's some other things that are outside there. The stuff that's outside the cap can blow out your cap, and then it goes directly to your residence, which hits your tax levy. So a lot of people, like in Jersey, believe that there's a 2% cap. And there is. But if there's stuff that goes outside that cap and it has to be paid, it's going to be paid through the tax levy. So you could see your taxes go up more than that. And remember, that's just your municipal tax. Then you have your school taxes, which is your local and your regional tax. Then you have your county taxes. You have your library taxes.
I don't think any of this is helping people want to get involved in government.
No. But you know what? It's really not that intricate. You can learn that you learn that as you go through it. Nobody's expecting anybody to come in and know that day one. Listen, I think that if you want to get, at least at the local level, if somebody wants to come in and get interested in politics, you have to have one concept. You want to do what's in the best interest of the team, of the group. It's team above self. If you go into it doing what is best for the township and its residents, and not yourself, not your friends, and none of that, you'll succeed. You'll always succeed. 99.9% of the time when you do what's in the best interest of the group, you are part of the group. See, a lot of times we forget that. We think in terms of singular. You are part of the group. So do what's in the best interest of the community, of the residents. Put their needs above your own. Means, you know what? Don't pave your road. Pave the worst road, not your road. When a friend asks you for a favor, there is no favors. We're doing what's in the best interest of the group, of the team, of your community, and your residents. That's the only qualification that I think that someone needs to get involved at any level of government. The rest of it will work itself out. When you're getting involved in the beginning, it's always a work in progress. Nobody comes in day one knowing this right off the bat, unless you were built into a family of wealth that were all politicians and you got tutored since you were at a young age. I just don't see that happening for anybody. And I think when those people come up that way, you're disconnected.
Right.
You don't know what's going on in the community. You don't know what the normal person needs. I mean, when I look at it, when we talk about taxes, the reason why I take finance and taxes and debt so serious is because I look at my seniors, right? So my seniors are on a fixed income. So now my taxes go up $1,000. Just my municipal tax or my whole tax goes up $1,000. My conversation might be no big deal. I mean, I still don't like it, but no big deal. Now they go up another $1,000. Okay. But there's a number for everybody. So when you're looking at your seniors and we're just arbitrarily saying, well, it's like taxes, they go up, it's certain. It's the wrong attitude, because there's a senior who lived in this town. Their family, their parents and grandparents lived in this town. And when we make these bad decisions, we hurt them. And we're a farmland community. We hurt the farmers. So what ends up happening is we don't keep our eye on the prize, and we don't recognize that all of our conversations are not the same. So when we look at it as $1,000 being arbitrary, that's the number that's going to force this senior who's lived here their whole life, grew up here, their families lived here, right out of the town. So what we're going to do is we're going to price the very same people that we, for some reason, keep talking about how we want to protect right out of the town. And it's not $1,000. It could be $10. And I've had this conversation with somebody. I asked them, I said, let me ask you a question. If I raise your taxes $1,000, and this is a wealthy person, does it bother you? And they said, no. I said, how about $2,000? Well, $2,000 would bother me. How about $4,000? Oh, that would be way too much. How about $4,500? That's ridiculous. How about $4,510? And you see, now they're starting to get the point that regardless of what the number is, there is a number.
Right.
So with my seniors, yeah, $10 can make the difference. So let's not be arbitrary about these finances. Let's make sure that we're looking at them and that it's dollar for dollar cost, that we're getting what we're putting out. Oh. That's what we should be doing.
And how can you ensure that? Because if you're just being arbitrary and saying we're going to raise taxes for everybody $1,000 and some people are going to eat it and some people are going to be fine. So what's the alternative to that? How
you're not. See, that's what I'm saying. Don't be arbitrary.
But the conventional wisdom is to be arbitrary.
It is. And I well, first of all, I think that's why you need the right people in office.
Sure.
Right. I think people need to be, again, what I said before. I think anybody can do this as long as you put the team first. But you can't be arbitrary about these taxes. They all matter, and you have to look at them. So when I came in, I looked at both internal and external costs. And what I did is I pulled the top three of both. And when I sat with my committee, I said, listen, I'm going to go through these with a fine-tooth comb. And whatever we find, whether we're underfunding or overfunding something, you guys have to be on board to make sure that we make this right. And they said, yeah, you have our support. And what I found out is that we were overfunding a lot of things. And it happens over years and nobody's keeping their eye on it. And again, I don't want to be the person saying here and it was done maliciously. I think some people just are not, we all have thresholds. Some people are good at finances. Some people are not. Some people are good at maintaining roads and some people are not. So we all have our thresholds and we have our strengths and our weaknesses. But the truth is that you need people in place that are keeping their eyes on it, and that when we're spending even $1, there has to be a cost justification to that dollar.
Well, and there's something to be said in budgeting as a whole, where if you don't spend it, you might not get it next year. So then what happens is people are spending their budget and you're like, well, we need it again. And nobody's looking below the surface to go, well, what'd you really spend it on? And it's like, no. We got to preserve that line. So then.
And you can.
Well, you can, but also if you're raising taxes and not cutting and not finding cuts, and now you're like, to your point about raising taxes and being arbitrary, it's one thing to do it that way. It's another thing to be finding savings and then turning around to your constituents and going, listen, I do have to raise it $10, but here's why. And if you actually have a justifiable case and can point to the fact that you did your homework, they might be more inclined to do it than you just saying it without reason.
You should always explain to them why you're raising the taxes. And so you have, when you're raising these taxes, like for instance, for the first 3 years, we kept the taxes flat, no raise. Now, mind you, we also kicked down the debt. Then the last 2 years, we did a minor increase. My taxes for my municipality, my municipal taxes went up $18 for the year. $18. I mean, I spend that more in 2 days at Dunkin' Donuts.
I spend that today at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it can be done. Yeah.
I mean, that's literally like, that's nothing. That's literally nothing.
It is. Think about this. We increased our surplus to $1 million, right? Which is basically your savings account. We cut your debt, and we left your taxes flat for 3 years and only did a minimal increase for 2 years. And on top of that, we paved 10 miles of road. We increased your connectivity to internet, and we installed a fire department, renovated 2 buildings, and we did all that. And we reduced your debt. We didn't add more debt. We reduced your debt. It can be done. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes out of the box thinking. It takes determination. Like, these are not just punchlines. These are not just after school words. Like, because it takes real commitment to do it. And it takes a team effort. No one person is doing it by themselves. But you got to be committed to getting this moving in the right direction. And you cannot cut funding for the sake of cutting funding. So here's the thing. You have a cap. You should be at that cap. So you're saying that if it's $1.8 million, that's what it costs us for my town to run. But think about it. When you start finding frivolous spending and you cut that spending out, the cap is still there. You're not going to give the money back.
Right.
But you don't have to continue to raise it. So if I find, let's say in $1.8 million, just to make the numbers round up, believe me, I'm not saying that this is the story, but let's say I find $500,000 of frivolous spending in that $1.8 million, which means I'm telling you right now that it only took me $1.3 million to run the town. I'm not giving you the $500,000 back because, like you said, I might need it now.
Sure.
So I can't give it back to you, but you know what I can do? I cannot raise your taxes.
Right.
That's a start. And now if it's $500,000, let me take that money and make that 500 feel like it's $1 million. Go fix a road, which increases the value of your town. So if you increase the value of your town, you're a better bet, which lowers the amount of interest on your debt notes. So now instead of somebody saying you're a bad bet, you're a better bet.
It's really basic, actually.
It is. It's 1 and 1 is 2. Here's the thing. And I try to explain this to people because somebody tried to tell me one time at a meeting that 1 and 1 was 3. And unless one of those ones identified as a 2, I don't know how we're getting to 3, but it's basic math. I mean, 1 plus 1 is 2. And it really comes down to it. And we don't have to complicate it with word salads and taking you in a circle. I'm simply explaining it.
Right. But that's the word. And so, perfect segue. You're talking about all this at the local level. You scale up to the Congress, and it's all word salad. Everything's circular. You can't get anything. You can't get a direct answer on anything. And it seems that a lot of these working class issues that might be identifiable to you at the local level can't even break through the conversation in Congress. So how do we change that? I know term limits are a factor, but beyond that, I mean, how do we actually take the foundation of local government, okay, and everything that you've just schooled us on and apply that to federal legislating?
Because we need to simplify government. You need term limits, and you need to simplify the government. I mean, we should not be using words in bills like whereas and thereas and whoas, and we could simply explain things to one another, but we choose not to. We overcomplicate it purposely. And if you simplify government, like, hey, you want to spend $1 billion? Give me the itinerary of what we're spending on. Please don't make me read through this whole thing to find out that you buried, $500,000 to determine what the gender identification of a frog is. It's ridiculous. What are we doing?
I'm talking, and I agree with you, but I'm talking about just the sense of priorities. I mean, even when it comes down to the hearings for these cabinet appointments, there's nothing going on, and it's not even a party thing because it cuts both ways every time. But there's never anything being discussed about qualifications. Everything is about character assassination.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even, I mean, there are people that are clearly not qualified for the job, and you're not even using the right ammo to take them down. It's like it's cringe to listen to some of these grown people ask questions that have nothing to do with job qualifications. And I just got to figure out, like, how do we get people like you in Congress? You made a comment to me before we started recording. You don't even want to run for office at that level.
Well, and I don't know if that's something that I'll aspire to do later on. I mean, listen, I don't really consider myself a politician, right? I saw a problem and I thought I could help fix it, and I tried to do the best that I could with the information that I was given in the time that I was allotted. Um, I told you before, the one thing in my life that I can never get back is my time. My time is invaluable. When people say, well, it's just your time. I mean, if you had to pay for my time, you'd be broke. I mean, it's the most precious thing that I have. I wasn't promised today, and I'm damn sure not guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
So I spend it wisely, and when I do something, I do it 100%. So that's why the genesis of why my wife did not want me to run for township committee is because I'm not a guy that's going to sit idle in the corner and just say yes or no and vote on things for the sake of voting on them. I'm going to stop the meeting in the middle of the meeting. I'm going to ask you to explain it to me. If I don't understand it, I'm going to stop it again. When I do something and I dedicate my time to it, I'm taking it away from my family. So I take it very, very seriously. So I want to spend these next couple of years. I mean, I have 3 kids. My oldest is 30. I have 2 grandkids. And, my daughter's a junior in college and my son's a sophomore in high school. And, he plays basketball and I want to enjoy this time with him. And then I'll determine what I want to do if I have any aspirations to do something, at a higher level, at a different level, then. But, I don't know what the fix is, for Congress or even the Senate. When we get into these hearings and instead of, really asking about qualifications and asking pertinent questions that, would determine if the person can actually do the job, instead of all the character assassination and the mudslinging, I don't know what that is, because it's petty, and I don't know how you fix petty. We could put every rule and regulation, but then to me, that's just more government oversight, which I hate. But I don't know. I mean, maybe we should all grow up a little bit. Maybe we should have parameters when people are interviewing for a job, because I got to tell you, if I was to run my interviews at my companies like this with employees coming in, I'm pretty sure I'd be sued.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's amazing what you can get away with in certain industries that you can't do in others.
On national TV. It's crazy.
Well,
it's crazy.
And the whole country's, it's all turned into one big reality show, right? So everybody gets up there and they get their minute to grandstand and they know that, oh, this might be my moment in the national spotlight, so let me take it. Let me dress you down instead of actually just finding out why you may or may not be right for the job. And look, there are people that are being put up there right now that are seriously not qualified, and they're going the wrong, the Democrats are going the wrong way about approaching it. And we've seen this before. I mean, we've seen the other version of this, where just this is the way it's going right now, obviously. And I just look at this and that's what you said. You said, grow up. I mean, it's that simple. It's literally, you people are adults, and I look at them and I go, you act like children. And then how are we supposed to inspire the next generation of leaders if this is our reference point?
You know what we should try to instill in the next generation and our kids, and even start to preach this, again, and it comes back to this 2-party system. And I'm not just saying just Republican Party, just anything that we use to divide people.
Sure.
It's not me against you. And we get caught up in that, right? Our feelings get hurt, and then it's that's it. It's me against you, and we're going to battle this out, and we throw all caution to the wind, and then we start doing that mudslinging and the character assassination. But it's not me again. I actually just said this in my meeting 2 weeks ago. It's not me against you. It's us against the problem. Why can't we get that through our thick heads? That there is a problem, right? If we're talking about quality of life and we all want to do what's best for the team, like I've said here with you several times, then let's talk about the problem. Maybe we both have a different way to solve the problem, but it is still our problem. If we found out that there was a meteor coming towards the Earth and it was going to end half of civilization, you think there would be party lines? You think we'd be like, I don't know, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. I mean, no, we would be all coming together like we did after 9/11, and we would say, this is a human problem. This is not a you problem or me problem. This is a we problem, and we need to figure this out.
No, please, we'd be arguing over whether it's a rock or a drone.
We'd be fake. First of all, it'd be fake news, and yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy.
It would definitely be a drone, though, by the way.
So it's always a drone. That's amazing, too.
It would be Trump. Actually, if it was a meteor, it would be because Trump made the meteor.
Oh, my Lord. The idea it's all hysterics, right? And the idea that it's we versus the problem, again, really, really simple concept. But then you got to ask, what is the problem? And there are so many problems. I personally think the largest issue we have is our standing on the world stage. When you look at how far behind our kids are in terms of being able to be leaders in the emerging markets, new technology, artificial intelligence, all of these things, right? Robotics, our kids are behind the eight ball. China is crushing us. And look, you know this, I'm on TikTok, right? We just got played over the weekend by China. And it's apparent to me that it's Chinese propaganda. And it's got nothing to do with party. Okay? It is.
No, but they literally showed us the hypocrisy of it all.
Yeah, but by Sunday, 95% of the people paying attention to it, and I use the term paying attention loosely, think the problem's solved, and there's been no resolution at all.
No.
We have 75 more days of uncertainty. And if you're somebody that makes a livelihood off of that, then you look at that and you go, what just happened? And it's like, obviously that's not the most important issue. But to your point, it brings out the hypocrisy.
But hold on, Royce. Is it not one of the most important issues? Because, again, yeah, there is some major hypocrisy in this. And listen, I told you this is my first podcast. I'm not a big social media guy. But let's look at it on its face, right? So we did it under the guise that TikTok is controlled by China, and they're mining our data and they're taking our data, right? So that's kind of the consensus, right? Are we agree on that?
Absolutely.
So then wouldn't that be considered a terrorist act?
Yeah, but it's not a free speech issue.
Right, but hold on. If that's the case, then why hasn't the government really got involved? But they didn't. So now then the next question to me would be is Google, Facebook, and Twitter and all these other people not mining our data? But that's okay. Is it because it's U.S.? And do we know for certain that they're not trading it to other parts of the world? I mean, I don't. So is it just something that we're doing under the guise to start to control? Listen, either we have free speech or we don't. Which one is it? Like, pick a side.
But we don't have free speech on platforms like Meta.
Right. But I'm just not a fan of them saying that they're going to ban something and they're going to go under the guise. And again, this is my personal opinion, that they're mining our data when I feel like my data is being mined by everybody.
Oh, sure. You have an Amazon device in your kitchen that's listening to everything you're saying. So it's not about the mining of the data. To your point, it's about who's got the data.
Correct.
And they don't like that China gets access to the data that they want.
Do you know that China doesn't get Facebook's data?
I'm sure they do.
Right. That's what I mean.
But my gripe is this, and this is coming from somebody that makes a living off the app. Like, y'all voted to get rid of it. And you can't even make your mind up after you made your mind up.
And that is the hypocrisy of government.
You voted, so it's done. It's a done deal. And then you have Trump. Everybody goes, Trump's going to save it. Trump's going to save it. I'm like, Trump's not going to save it. Then you go listen to Trump these last 2 days. And if you listen closely, because he doesn't talk about TikTok, he gets asked about TikTok. So a guy like me's got to pay attention. Everybody else has moved on, right? They cried for 12 hours and they're back in the app like crackheads. Okay. I'm still like, wait a second, listen closely. He basically just told you it could go either way. So we're still a coin toss away from a decision. And I don't think that Trump really gives I'm told you not to curse, so I won't curse. But I don't think Trump gives two boops about it, especially when he's talking about, China controls the Panama Canal. Okay, whether they do or don't, it's not even the point I'm trying to make. It says you can't talk out of one side of your mouth and say China's bad, and then go, out of the other side of your mouth, we have so many products from China, what's one more?
Because it benefited him. I mean, he used TikTok, he used the platform for his campaign, and it benefited him, which is why I don't know if I totally agree, because I think he might be really mulling it over. I think he might be thinking about it. I think he has Elon Musk on his team, and I think that it's something that's probably, it's not on the top of their radar, but it's not something that they're just going to sweep under the rug because now it's served its purpose. I think that they realize that this is a real tool that can be used. Listen, am I comfortable with my data being mined by China? Absolutely not. I'm just calling out the hypocrisy of it. If you really feel this way, to me, that's an act of terrorism. What are we going to do about it? We're going to just ban the app. I mean, what about Binance? I know that Binance has a U.S. version of it. It's still controlled by China. What about that?
Well,
I mean, what other apps?
What about Zoom?
There you go.
Zoom made so much money off the pandemic from us. I mean, China was the number one benefactor of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that therein lies the hypocrisy of the government. Listen, the jury's out on TikTok, and at 75 days, I'm going to be real interested to see. I don't want to see what they do. I want to see what they say. I want to see if they don't ban it, why they're not banning it. I want to see what their stance is. I mean, did China stop mining our data? Are they going to put restrictions on it and have an agreement with China? Are they going to force China to sell it to a U.S. entity?
Can you?
Is Elon? I don't know. I mean, you can't force them. No, you can't force them.
Well, you can browbeat them and manipulate them. Okay, but I don't think they're going to allow for that. And I think at the end of the day, there are much bigger battles that Trump is going to take on with China, and that's not the battle he's going to die on. That will become a partnership.
But I wonder if they're not going to rope it in at some point.
Sure.
Because this was, you got to remember, like, for most people, like for me, right? I'm looking at the bills. I'm looking at the border. I'm looking at the money we're sending to Ukraine. I'm looking at these things.
Yes.
But but remember, I'm a certain age, and the majority of the younger generation, they are looking at this TikTok. And this has actually gotten people a little bit more up to date on what's going on in politics because it actually physically touches them. For older people, they're saying things like TikTok schmickschmock. They don't care. Well, for younger people, they do care. I mean, listen, my son had a whole opinion on this, and he said, and you know, he's 16 years old, so the most you get from a 16-year-old is a grunt. But when it came to this and them, canceling it, he's like, yep, TikTok's down. People are downloading the Chinese version. And then later in the day, he's like, nope, it's back up. And then he had a whole explanation, and it's probably that he's spoken to me in 2 years, So I think younger generation are really tapped into what's going on here.
But I think that's actually part of the problem is because they're tapped into something that has no value. If you go over to the Chinese version of TikTok, it's all educational based. Our version of TikTok is all trends and lowbrow,
derelict stuff. Yeah.
Dumb videos.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm looking at the folks in Congress and saying, how many of you all have stock in Meta and how much of this is really just about your own pockets? Because like you said, many times on this show, follow the money, right? If you take the money out of it, it changes the whole conversation.
And anything, to me, I'm a firm believer that in anything in life, once you take the money off the table, things get real honest real quick.
So, Keith, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate you, and I know you don't do a lot of these things, so thank you for being not just willing to do it, but being so honest. And I hope this inspires somebody to get involved. That's, you're a working class guy. I mean, listen, if you're friends with Joey, you got to be a working class guy. I mean, that guy, as much as I give him a hard time, I mean, he is the epitome of a working class guy, and I respect the grind for anybody that is out there before the sun comes up, and by like 8:30 in the morning, you've already done a half a day, and those are the kind of people that I think that we should have in Congress, people that actually work.
I mean, again, the people from the back of the line.
Yeah.
I mean, when a lot of times when you make your way all the way to the front of the line and you're leading, that's great. And you worked your way there sometimes. I mean, in some instances, and hopefully in most instances, you worked your way up the ladder from the back. But don't forget about the people in the back because you were one of them. And remember, they know what's going on. It touches them first.
Yeah.
And you can govern better when you're tapped into those people. That's why you need to govern together. You need to listen to the people. And I don't mean that as just lip service, like, oh, yeah, we took a poll, we took a referendum. No, you need to get out there and actually hear the people, see their struggles. A teacher should not work 2 jobs to make ends meet. No, they should not be paying for their own supplies.
Absurd.
Somebody should not work a full-time job and live in a car. Should not happen. Not in this country.
We shouldn't even be paying our Congress. Like, I honestly think it should be like it used to be. You have your job, and when it's time to legislate, you head in, you legislate, you go back to work.
Shouldn't get I tell you what, you shouldn't get a pension after 1 year of service.
No, and you shouldn't be allowed to make money off of being a congressman for a certain amount of years after that. No book deals, no speaking engagements.
I got to tell you, just before we go, I got to tell you that the one thing that really does baffle me is someone to come into any office and your net worth is a couple $100,000, and by the time you're done in that office, your net worth is a couple $1 million. I don't care how many speaking engagements you do. That alone, to me, is problematic.
Yeah, and then look at that, and then go, well, how many bills got passed with your name attached to them?
Correct.
At least if you had a whole bunch of progress to attach to that amount of money, I could say, hey, you're getting stuff done.
Well, just think about it. If you were to pass a law that says when you take on this job, you can't get paid for speaking engagements. You can't get paid by any special interest for anything other than this. This is what you're doing. Watch how many people don't want this job no more. See, and once you take that money off the table, you are going to get real people that want to do this for the right reasons and not the other people that are trying to create a living off it. Because again, how many times do you see someone get elected? Very little gets done, and all we keep talking about is their next election. And next thing you know, you pick your head up and 30 years have passed.
I mean, Trump got elected last month, 2 months ago, whatever it was. And that same night, they started talking about the primary.
Yep.
And the one thing that I think that we can learn from the Democrats this last election, if there's anything we can learn from them, there's actually probably a lot we can learn from them, just not in the way that they wish. But, and I'm saying this as a true, look, I was raised in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Okay, nice.
So, and there's no reason those people should be deciding the election. I firmly believe in abolishing the Electoral College. The fate should not reside in one county. That's absurd.
Absolutely not. It's an old system.
Antiquated. We can have 1-to-1 votes for American Idol.
Listen, 100 million people vote for you, and that's what wins. You're in. That's it.
I want to see working class people get into Congress and take over. And I used to think that it was the best way to do that was a third party system. But I feel like the two parties are so broken right now. We actually need to use the system to reform the system. Like the third party right now is counterproductive. And I used to, growing up, think third party was the solution. But even to your point, I mean, there was no way you were going to get elected from the outside.
No, but what you said is right. You need to fix it from the inside out, and you need people to get in that are going to utilize the power to give the power back to the people. That's why you'll never see term limits, because they'll never vote themselves for term limits.
Right.
Because once they do, you will see a change and a shift in this country, and other people will get involved. How do people get involved? By stuff like you're doing right now. People need to get out there to the masses and let them know that this is not a complicated thing. It's not something you should be scared of. And guess what? Nobody knows everything that they need to know going into it. But you just have to have the things that I say, the willingness to do it and the right reasons to do it. Other than that, all the stuff can be taught. This isn't on-the-job training. Nobody grows up saying, oh, I know about the caps. I know about this. I know. They don't.
Right.
And if you go in for the right reasons and you'll have the right support group and you'll ask the right questions and you'll put the right effort in, you're going to learn it. You'll be better for it. Your community will be better for it. And listen, growth starts from the inside out. Let's start here at the municipal levels.
Yeah.
Let's start fixing these little communities, getting to the bigger communities, to the county levels, to the state levels, and it'll materialize to the federal levels. But it has to start somewhere. Because everybody said, a lot of times we'll quit before we even start, but change has to start somewhere. So let's stop saying what we can't do. Let's just start doing the things we can do. We can start at the municipal level. I think things like your podcast and what you're starting to do right now is a step in the right direction, because every day, an everyday resident needs to know that all you have to do is go get a petition, have the willingness to do the job, and want to do what's in the best interest of your community.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Final question, sir. I'm going to ask you one more time. If you do run, what position would you run for next? Because you got to be thinking about this.
I don't know if I would want to be a state senator. I think I would probably want to do something. It would probably be Congress. I'd probably want to run for a congressional seat. If I was going to do something, but if I do something and I donate my time to it, I really want to do something that I can exact positive change. that I can actually be a voice that's not going to get buried, but that I have a platform to really speak on issues that people want to talk about that has some level of accountability.
Have you had state leaders come to you and ask you to run for Congress?
I haven't had any state leaders. I mean, I've spoken to like other mayors, other elected officials, and then just people within my circle, that have come to me and asked me if I was interested in running for a state senate. See, I think they actually wrote a letter to the state, because one of the state senators had spoken to me about it, I believe, kind of saying that they would like to see me run for a state senate seat. But you know, again, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to cross that bridge when I get to it. You know, 2.5 years. So 2.5 years, I'll sit and think about it. In the meantime, I'm going to try to sit down and I'm going to try to write a book about my time on the committee and at the municipal level. I think that I've learned a lot, and I have some things that I'd like to be able to share with the public and the masses. And I'm going to write a book on how it was erecting that fire department that we did.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, you have the whole list of accomplishments here. Well,
that fire department is probably the single. So it's the first fire department erected in the state of New Jersey in almost 40 years.
That's wild on itself.
We renovated a building. We now have 19 members. We got 5 vehicles. We did all of this at zero cost to my residents. I mean, they can't even build a birdhouse half the time. You couldn't even build a bench. We built a fire department at no cost to my residents. I mean, we reduced the debt and added an emergency service. And it was an amazing accomplishment. Director McCutsky, from DFS at the state, came down, and everybody that was involved, it was blown away. Matter of fact, I think their exact words when they spoke to us is, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because the conversation today is people are trying to close down these emergency services, and you're trying to start one. And I said, yes, we are. And it took, I believe it was April 12th in 2022, we adopted the ordinance to establish a fire department. And then about 18 months, maybe 19 months, March 1st of 2024, we were released from DFS and we rolled out. And to date, I think we have close to 100 calls.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really an amazing accomplishment. And honestly, I was very proud of my committee, but I was more proud of these volunteers in my town that stepped up. I mean, to put something like this together, it really was a fantastic accomplishment, and I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of my guys.
Yeah, as you should be. But you're telling me that people are trying to shut down emergency services?
Well, I think what's happening is that throughout the state, because volunteerism is down, they're shutting departments down because they don't have enough people that want to step up and volunteer for these departments. Some of them for budgetary reasons, because the majority of the fire departments and emergency services throughout the state of New Jersey is volunteer.
Sure.
So it's very hard. So I think they were very taken back that we decided to start one up. And again, it was quite the accomplishment, and it took a lot of work, a lot of effort. You know, and we didn't pull volunteers from other servicing departments. We actually added to mutual aid. So we got 15 volunteers that weren't working with anybody else to step up and volunteer for their town. So it as you can tell, I'm very proud of that accomplishment.
As you should be. And I'm glad you brought it up, because actually out of all the things that I was reading, that was the one that jumped out at me at the most. My childhood best friend, someone Joey knows, started out as a volunteer firefighter, had a career as a New York City firefighter. So firefighting and first responders are near and dear to my heart, and that's just a remarkable accomplishment. And listen, this is why we need guys like you in Congress. Forget state senate. Get in there. You're the kind of efficiency we need, not Elon Musk.
I appreciate that. Thanks for those kind words. And like I said, I mean, it could be something that I'm gonna, think about and probably make a decision on doing. But I do want to enjoy the time with my son. I mean, I'm never gonna get this time back with him,
No, that's
so. I really do. I want to enjoy it, and then then it'll be empty nest syndrome, and then I'll see what I want to do next. I mean, my wife doesn't want me to do anything. She didn't want me to do this, but now she knows that it's something that I've been thinking about. So
Yeah, but I mean, just the way you're talking, I think anybody will walk away from this conversation and see that you are not a leader who is trying to lead based off of partisan politics, but you're actually trying to affect change. And I commend you for that, and I thank you for your time. I look forward to actually meeting you in person. First round's on me.
Sounds good. When you coming down?
Whenever, man, whenever you're running.
All right, that sounds good. I'll
I'll
hold
knock
you
on
to that.
doors. I will knock on doors, sir. It wouldn't be my first time.
I'll hold you to that.
Hey, I'll knock on a couple thousand doors for you.
Sounds great. Well, listen, thanks, Royce. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure, sir. Talk soon.
Have a good evening.